Hello people! Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew, and today we're doing another knife review. This is the Kubey Leaf. It is one of my first new Kubeys. Quick little rundown here. AUS 10 steel. This really kind of cool vibe on it with this nice curve. High Swedge saber grind. Makes for a very nice distal taper. Bearings, and basically all the cool stuff Kubey is. It is a front flipper, and you can do it either Bic or otherwise. Pretty nice. Couple of bits here first. Let's have some standardized measurements. So you come up here and you go 7 inches, 3 inches on the blade to the handle scale, and 2 3/4 sharpened edge. Very, very legal, very pocketable, and dare I say, a useful size. A couple other little bits here. Let's get on with the measured weight. 1/100th of an ounce over 3. Close enough 3 ounces for me to call it that. All right, so very light. Lots of, let's see if you can see it, lots of milling in there. You can kind of see some of the, I don't know if I can get it right anyway. Maybe another day. Anyway, there's plenty of milling, deep carry pocket, and a lanyard that is reduced for giving anything, but it doesn't completely go all the way to the liners like a lot of the Civivis. It actually has some of the scale there for some rounding, which is an interesting choice. And nice in-between bit. Couple of standardized other measurements. Paramilitary 2 and pair 3 Spyderco sandwich. Definitely closer to the pair 3 in case the measurements didn't tell you that. And it's just a blur. Boom. Slightly smaller, lots less blade, slightly smaller blur. Not just any leak, but a random leak. Not bad. Definitely much closer to the leak in many ways, including hand space. Another perennial bestseller. Right there. Bug out. Does it take the place of the bug out? No, but it's very similar in size and has a lot of similar capacities. And there is the Civivi Elementum, one that I think is right in the same type of ballpark as this bad boy. And it's not too bad. I mean, the Swedge Elementum definitely nice. And of course, as you can see, my Wiener is thicker, if not longer. All right. So let's get right into it. Design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost-value ratio, and the expectations and or requests for the damn nicer stuff. Design first. It's unusual. It's different. It's got kind of this arc, which quite honestly is very, very similar. It's a knife that has been reviewed on here again. From point to pivot and pivot to end, a very similar curvature to the Vosti Mini Nightshade. There's a couple of others if we want to give some nice, basically the ones that are based upon the Schilin knife give you a lot of the same sort of angle from tip to pivot and then pivot down to handle. You get a lot of that same stuff. And that is not a bad thing when it comes to the design, because the ergonomics, if you go back on the saber grip, you got a little bit of hold with your pinky on the back there to give it a little bit, but a nice little thumb ramp, giving you lots of direct from thumb to point, right? Very, very direct power. While your hand's angled, the tip's not. You know where it is. In the overhand or the scoring type cut, this is absolutely, you know exactly where that point is. It's very, very good. And in the overhand style grip, the thumb put right on the pivot, that nice big pivot gives you a nice little kind of button to put your thumb on. There's just enough choil to get your finger in there, and the thumb ramp acts as a nice little kind of ramp for your fingers, well, giving you a very good grip, and the extra space for the 3 fingers is very nice. And this is really, really close. And of course, in the reverse style grip, the letter opener style. This is actually fantastic. Where you, instead of turning your hand like this, I often can just flip this knife this way, and it works great for opening packages. I don't know if you can see, this has been used. There we go. You can see the use right there. This knife has been used and tested, which is pretty much the most of its use. Very good action as well as we start to get into it. But the design, the ergonomics, it comes in other colors. I like the black and red. I like the Deadpool style. It was definitely good on that. It's really relatively clean. Reversible pocket clip, good ergos, and this unique angle. The aesthetics of it, give it a really unusual look. It's different. This thing actually catches your eye. It does what it needs, but it looks just different. If you're one of those people who's like, look, I've seen a million of these. Yeah, I know they're good, and that's why people keep making them, but I've seen a million drop points. This is different. I want something different. Hey, this is a good knife. AUS 10, not my favorite steel. Is it bad? No. It's really good. It's relatively corrosion resistant, has pretty good, has high-end kitchen cutlery levels of edge retention. We're talking things like better than 440C, or at least equivalent to, and getting closer to things like VG10 and 154CM. You start to get that kind of edge retention or close to it. I actually believe VG10 and 154CM have slightly better, but AUS 10 still does quite well. Quite good for a knife that is, in the Kubey's generally a budget or value range, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just they tend to make knives that are more geared towards value and budget. And AUS 10 is a great steel fat. It's not one of my favorites. I would actually prefer 9CR18 almost to AUS 10 or 154CM in my own personal taste. But AUS 10 is not bad. It's not a bad steel anyway. It's just sort of like, do you like dark chocolate or milk chocolate? They're both chocolate. They're both good. You just like one better than the other. You don't dislike milk chocolate just because you like dark chocolate most of the time. That might be my own personal preference, but so be it. All right, that's moving into it. So the aesthetics, you may or may not like it. But it has a theme, which I like. It definitely has a single arc, single curve, tucks in nice, and you can tell that the lines are trying to go to a particular thing. The curve and the grind, it's continuously themed on the aesthetics, which I like. The mechanics are pretty darn good. It flips easy. It works good. The G10 seems to be standard quality, or which is to say good. There's definitely thought that went into things like the lanyard hole. They didn't really chamfer the lanyard hole on the G10 too much. It's pretty rough right there. So the G10 edge might do some work on your lanyard material. Of all the things to complain about at this price, yeah, it wouldn't have been hard to do, but it wasn't done. If you carry a lanyard and you're looking at this might not be your best option, simply because you'll probably run through some lanyard material pretty quick. If you don't carry a lanyard, well, who cares? So that really gets there, and that really brings us to the noteworthy points of this. The mechanics are great, the aesthetics, I like them. I like that it looks cool as well as offers a different type of functionality. So I do like the aesthetics. The design, I'm going to give a 5. The aesthetics, I'll give a 4. The mechanics, while not perfect, I'll give a 4 on it because they do indeed work well. Noteworthy points on it really is that it's unusual. That high swedge, the different grind, the overall design of it is its noteworthy point. It's designed to be slightly different from most of the stuff out there in a world where you have worn cliffs and worn cleavers and drop points, and everyone's arguing whether it's a worn foot or a sheep's cliff or a reverse tanto. Reverse tanto. Anyway, so everyone's arguing about whether these things are. This thing just kind of pulls its own little niche in its design, and that's its most noteworthy part. It's just different enough to stand out by design, and that's pretty good. And its intended purpose is obviously an EDC knife while having something a little different to offer. And it does it very well. It doesn't do a stylistic design just for style's sake. It actually adds some comfort in particular grips, some functionality, especially if you're doing something that's in the reverse, like you're pulling twine, you're doing anything like opening an envelope where you roll that blade over and now it fits perfectly in your hand as you're doing control and you're rolling things up. This does that well. Its EDC capabilities, absolutely great. It is a package piercer, a saran wrap slicer, a cardboard carver extraordinaire, and an envelope eviscerator. And it does it all good. So that's really hard. And that brings us into the next bit. Depending upon where you find these are around $55 to $57 or thereabouts, somewhere between $55 and $60. I'm sure depending on tax and other stuff, there'll be a couple bucks of variance, but it's right in that $55 to $60 range, depending upon where and when you buy it. And that's a high. It's a high value number. It's also an extraordinarily competitive segment of the marketplace, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just there's a lot out there, and not much. And some of them are really trying to distinguish themselves by just adding non-functional stuff. And the Kubey doesn't. This is also one of my first Kubeys. It's not the very first one. Kubey, whichever it is. It is. I bought two of them to try them so that I could have two different experiences. So it is technically not my first, but it's tied for first. And one of the things that Kubey seems to really try and do is provide value. And this seems to really, really do it well. And that's a high cost to value ratio indeed. I expected this to be a good value knife. I've seen some reviews of Kubeys. I've had mixed reviews. I tend not to be a big fan of the Amazon only knives. I don't feel like there's enough quality control in a lot of those marketplaces. Just is what it is. There's just not enough checks and balances in those marketplaces that are properly applied. So I've been awfully wary. There's a couple of them that I may have missed because of it. But this is pretty good. AUS 10, good steel. I expected it to be good EDC blade, and it really, really is. And I don't know if I have a lot of requests for this one. This is a hard one to request because it's unique. It does kind of limit itself in scope to those who like something like this, or people like me or other people you see on YouTube. They're collectors or that sort of thing. So you can come in here and look at it and be like, oh, that is really cool. But the expectation on this, like, I'm not going to sit here and say just high, like, yeah, you could do higher materials. But if there's anything, I think the single expectation request is just a slight bit more choil, or a bit of choil right here that's more engaged and designed towards a finger being there. It doesn't change. In fact, there's already some concavity right there where you could actually change that G10 and that to fit the profile of the blade. Wouldn't change the open capacity or anything like that, but it would give you a little bit more. And of course, chamfering of that lanyard hole. Look, if you're going to put a lanyard hole, if you're going to take the time to put a lanyard hole in a knife, would you please make it useful to people who use lanyards? That's probably the simplest thing. It's like, we're going to put all this effort in for lanyard people, and then we're going to make it so it cuts the string they put in there. It just doesn't seem to make sense. So there's that. It's not perfect. But I kind of like the Swedge. It does an interesting job of going all the way out and maintaining. See if you see that. There's no fat spot where that Swedge runs into the primary grind. It just gets straight and then goes. So there's an interesting. It doesn't get wider where it hits. It manages to hit that primary bevel right at the same thickness that this Swedge has been going at the whole time. So there's an interesting part there. Would I request something different? I don't know if I'd even request this in higher stuff. I could say, yeah, D2 maybe, 154. There's steel choices that make different. Very subjective. Again, AUS 10 is not bad. So there's still choices I might like, but it's really not that much. It's not that there aren't ways for this knife to be improved. It's just this particular design doesn't get a lot from higher end materials. Yes, you can get a little more tough Toughness, though not much, considering the budget materials and the toughness they have. Yes, you could probably get some better corrosion resistance than AOS 10. Definitely could get some better edge retention. But this is a good balance, and it's good for EDC usage. And that's really where this comes in, because it's snappy, right? It's very controllable on the drop. It's useful. The scoring, EDC type stuff where you're going in, point control to be able to, if you're going to do something like pick a sliver or anything like that, the point control on this, you can get way up by that point without putting the rest of your hand in danger and get some really significant control, whether it be for scoring or using sideways to try and get into something. It's very, very useful. This is a good, outstanding EDC knife. And I suppose I'm sitting here at the request, trying to find if there's any one thing I would probably request is a slightly larger size or form factor. Having to put my finger back here in the saber grip, which is a very useful grip on this knife, along with others. In fact, the ergonomics is one of the best things about this. This dropping off tail right here is not my favorite. If anything, I would probably want like a 3.3 to 3.4, maybe even a 3.5, but right around that 3.2 to 3.4 range, 3.25 or so. Slightly longer handle, so we're getting almost a whole nother inch on here, which is plenty of room for another finger, as well as room to get in there. You could even probably round that tail, even though it would be a little bit. There's just a lot of space for either concavity on that so it's easier to see that your finger goes there, or just a slightly longer blade and form factor. But there's nothing wrong with this one. I could use a slightly bigger version of it simply because this handle makes your pinky support it on that ramp in the saber grip. Probably the biggest one. I'm actually going to hit this with a 4-star review as well, just to review a little bit, because one, design is good, unique, unusual, in a competitive market without doing something that's just to wow factor. It does very well. It does very, very good in that. The aesthetics, unique and well done, held together. A cohesive design that has corresponding arcs, lines, and angles. Absolutely fantastic. The mechanics of it, Kubey has nailed it. Excellence on the mechanics. It's starting to become only noteworthy if a knife doesn't work great. With excellence being so good on most of the pocket knives these days, it's more noteworthy if you find one that isn't smooth, hydraulic, drop shut, or anything like that. The attention paid by knife manufacturers to that sort of thing has been pretty significant, and now they're all pretty much really good. So mechanics, top notch. Noteworthy points are really the knife itself. It's not too often that you see something where the most noteworthy point of the knife is the design, and this is one of them. It's just a different kind of design than the normal EDC knife you see, and it does it in a way that's useful, capable, and inexpensive. I was going to say cheap because it rhymes, but it makes it sound bad. So the noteworthy on it is also its intended purpose. It's an EDC beast with a particular bend towards those types of tasks. And its cost to value ratio is right up there. Yeah, there are cheaper knives. Yeah, there are better knives possibly. Maybe steel choices, maybe slight bits of attention to detail, though there's, considering the price, the level that this thing is finished at is pretty darn good. But it's as good as any of them as an overall knife for this price point, which makes it a great cost to value ratio. It at least met my expectations of a budget EDC knife, and it actually exceeded them by the design being so good. I thought it was an interesting design when I went to pick up this knife. I was not disappointed. I thought it was interesting, and I was like, it could be good, it could be crap. It's good. This is a really good knife. It really, really is. This is a pocket knife that'll last you a long time. It has style. It has aesthetics. It's well put together. I don't know about Kubey and the company's commitment to customer service, but their commitment to quality and doing a good job is very apparent in the work sitting in front of me. And with that being said, I'm going to start to wrap this up, you guys, because it's really hard to not take a look at this value and say, wow, this is really amazing. Deep carry clip, steel clip. Yeah, you could like it, not like it. There's good or bad. Several things you can sit on here where it goes in and you kind of tuck up. But yeah, it just really does everything good. So 4 stars overall. The single greatest bit about it is that it is, for all intents and purposes, a budget knife. There's no one thing that's outstanding about this design, except that the design itself would lend itself to multiple materials. And that's the hallmark of a good design and a good knife. You can make it with different materials and it's still a good knife. That's kind of the point. So this really did well by me on my expectations. And the request for it, I'm not going to sit here and say I want another one. I could use, there's different steels I use, but again, this is not bad. I happen to prefer other ones, but this isn't going to make me cry or not use it like 8CR13 might. It's just not that bad. And that's, AUS 8A on a small knife is not my favorite. You get to something bigger, it's more okay. And this one just, it does a really good job of blending qualities in both steel, manufacturing, and design to really make a good all-around EDC knife. 4 stars. Well done, Kubey, on my first one for a review. I really have to sit here and say it's hard to realize they do pretty good. I don't know about some of their earlier designs, but this definitely has some work for it, and it does it very well. So that's it, you guys. 4 stars. It's damn nice on the damn nice scale. Sorry, 4 stars on the damn nice scale. We'll get that into one sentence sooner or later. But and that's going to be it. Highly it's I don't know about highly, but it's recommendable, and you won't be disappointed if you are looking at purchasing this knife. I'm not going to sit here and say that it tells me that all of Kubey's knives are great, but it does set up a really good experience so far for other Kubey knives, which are coming. So watch out for those reviews. And in the meantime, this is the end of this review and this dose of Drew. So take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.